The ancient stone glowed softly under the portable lights as Dr. Rachel Stone brushed away centuries of dust. Her hands trembled slightly as she revealed more of the carved symbols, each one perfectly preserved despite the harsh winds that had scoured this dead planet for millennia. The air recycler in her suit hummed quietly, a constant reminder that she was far from home on a world that had forgotten how to support life. "Alex, you need to see this," she called to her colleague through the comm system. Dr. Alex Rivera looked up from his translation pad, his dark eyes reflecting excitement even through his helmet visor. He had been working on similar carvings for 3 days, and his progress had been frustratingly slow. The planet they stood on had once been called Kepler 186f by Earth's astronomers, but the inhabitants had known it by a different name. The Alterans had built magnificent cities here, their spires reaching toward twin suns that still burned overhead. Now only ruins remained, and the expedition team was the first to walk these streets in over 10,000 years. Dr. James Wright emerged from a collapsed building nearby, his geological scanner beeping softly. "The dating is consistent across all structures," he announced. "Whatever happened here, it happened fast. No signs of war, no evidence of plague or natural disaster. They just stopped existing." Rachel continued her careful work, revealing more symbols. The Alterans had been methodical record keepers, and their stone archives were filled with detailed accounts of their civilization. Trade records, scientific discoveries, cultural celebrations, all carved in their flowing script. But this section was different. The symbols here seemed urgent, almost desperate. "I think I have something," Alex said, his voice tight with concentration. He had been studying Alteran linguistics for 5 years, ever since the first ruins were discovered. "This section talks about a warning, a message they left for whoever would come after them." Rachel stopped brushing and looked at her colleague. "What kind of warning?" Alex's translation pad flickered as he input more symbols. "They mentioned something about guardians and—" He paused, checking his work twice. "They mention Earth. They specifically mention Terra, the third planet of Sol system." The silence that followed was broken only by the wind outside their temporary shelter. James put down his scanner and walked over to join them. "That's impossible. Earth was unknown to any galactic civilization 10,000 years ago. We barely had agriculture." "I know what I'm reading," Alex insisted. He pointed to specific symbols on his pad. "See this grouping? It translates roughly to those who watch or guardians. And this one here means darker threat or consuming shadow. The whole passage reads something like, the humans of Terra. They guard against the darker threat that comes from the void." Rachel stared at the ancient stone. The implications were staggering. How could a civilization that died out before humans had even developed writing know about Earth? More importantly, what were they supposedly guarding against? "There has to be more," she said finally. "Keep translating. Every symbol, every fragment." Over the next 2 days, the pattern became clearer and more disturbing. The Alterans had not just mentioned Earth in passing. An entire section of their final records was dedicated to humanity, describing them as the only species capable of standing against something they called the Devourer, or the Consuming Dark. The records spoke of this entity with obvious terror, describing it as something that ate minds and souls rather than flesh. But the most shocking discovery came when Alex found references to other civilizations. The Alterans claimed that multiple species across the galaxy had left similar warnings about humanity's role as guardians. They had been part of a vast network of civilizations that had all perished, but not before leaving messages for future generations. "We need to check other sites," Rachel decided on the 3rd day. "If the Alterans are telling the truth, we should find similar warnings in ruins across the galaxy." James consulted his star charts. The nearest dead civilization is about 12 light-years from here. The Proximan ruins on Proxima Centauri C. The archaeological survey there found evidence of a species that died out about 20,000 years ago. "Different time period," Alex noted. "If they left the same warning, that would suggest this threat, whatever it is, has been a concern for a very long time." Rachel made her decision quickly. "We're going to investigate. I want samples from every major ruin site we can reach. If there's a pattern here, we need to find it." The journey to Proxima Centauri C took 6 days through hyperspace. During the trip, Alex continued translating the remaining Alteran records while James analyzed geological samples from multiple dig sites. Rachel coordinated with archaeological teams across the galaxy. requesting access to ruins that had previously been considered unimportant. When they arrived at the Proximan ruins, Rachel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the planet's cold atmosphere. The architecture was completely different from Alteran design, but the same desperate urgency seemed to permeate the structures. These beings had also known something terrible was coming. The Proximans had used a different writing system, but Alex's linguistic software was able to establish basic translation protocols within hours. What they found made Rachel's blood run cold. "Same message," Alex reported, his voice barely above a whisper. "They call humans the Watchers in the Dark, and warn that something called the Void Walker, or the shadow that hungers, can only be stopped by Terra's children." James looked up from his scanner. "These ruins are definitely older than the Alteran ones, by at least 10,000 years. How is this possible?" Rachel didn't have an answer. Two completely different civilizations, separated by time and space, had both left warnings about humanity's role in protecting the galaxy from some unknown threat. Either civilization should have known Earth existed, let alone understood humanity's supposed destiny. "Contact the research station," she ordered. "I want teams dispatched to every dead civilization site we know about. If this pattern holds, we're dealing with something much bigger than we imagined." As their ship prepared to jump to the next site, Rachel stared out at the alien stars and wondered what ancient threat her species was supposedly destined to face. Whatever it was, civilizations had been dying while trying to warn the galaxy about it for tens of thousands of years. The hunt for answers had only just begun. 3 weeks later, Dr. Rachel Stone stood before a holographic display that made her question everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. The research station orbiting the dead world of Proxima Centauri C had become the center of the most important archaeological investigation in galactic history. Teams from 6 different species had contributed data, and the results were both fascinating and terrifying. "Show me the timeline again," Rachel requested, and the hologram shifted to display a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy, with dates floating above various star systems. Dr. Alex Rivera manipulated the display controls. "The earliest warning we found dates back 52,000 years. The Voidani civilization on Kepler 442b. They left crystal matrices with the same basic message about Terra's guardians." 52,000 years, Dr. James Wright repeated, shaking his head. "Humans were barely using stone tools at that point." The hologram showed glowing points across multiple spiral arms of the galaxy. Each point represented a dead civilization, and each one had left the same impossible warning about humanity. The crystalline archives of the Etherians, the quantum resonance records of the silicates, the bioneural memory banks of the collective mind species, all different technologies, all different time periods, all carrying the same message. "The pattern is undeniable," Alex continued. "Every major civilization that went extinct in the last 50,000 years left some form of warning about a threat they called by various names. The Devourer, the Consuming Dark, the Void Walker, the Shadow that Hungers. But they all agree on one thing: humanity is the only species capable of standing against it." Rachel studied the data streaming across her personal tablet. Teams had now investigated ruins on 17 different worlds, and the consistency was remarkable. Not just the basic warning, but specific details that shouldn't have been possible for these ancient civilizations to know. "Look at this," she said, highlighting a section of translated text. "The Etherians specifically mention that humans possess minds that cannot be consumed, and wills that shine in the deepest darkness. How could they know anything about human psychology?" Dr. Wright pulled up geological surveys on his scanner. "What bothers me more is the location data. Look at this star map." The hologram shifted to show the positions of all the dead civilizations. "They're all positioned in a rough arc around this region of space." He indicated a section of the galaxy that appeared completely black. Alex frowned at the display. "What's in that area?" "Nothing," Wright replied grimly. "Absolutely nothing. No stars, no planets, no cosmic dust, not even background radiation. It's a complete void in space, and according to our long-range sensors, it's been slowly expanding for thousands of years." The implications hit Rachel like a physical blow. "You're saying this threat, whatever it is, actually exists? It's real?" "The evidence suggests that something in that void zone has been systematically destroying civilizations for millennia," Wright confirmed. and every species that encountered it managed to leave a warning about humanity before they died. Rachel activated the station's communication array. I need to contact the Galactic Council immediately. This information needs to reach every inhabited system. While she prepared her report, Alex continued analyzing the linguistic patterns in the ancient warnings. The consistency was remarkable, but there were subtle differences that provided additional clues about the nature of the threat. "Rachel, look at this," Alex called out. The more recent warnings, the ones from civilizations that died out only a few thousand years ago, they're more specific about the threat. The hegemony of Tau Ceti left detailed descriptions of psychological attacks that drove their entire population to madness before they vanished. The Tau Ceti records were particularly disturbing. They described an entity that attacked minds directly, feeding on consciousness itself. The record spoke of entire cities falling silent as their inhabitants simply stopped thinking, their minds drained of everything that made them alive. But here's the interesting part, Alex continued. They specifically mentioned that the entity cannot affect the warrior dreamers of the third world of soul. They describe humans as having natural mental barriers that this thing cannot penetrate. Dr. Wright looked up from his geological analysis. That matches what we're seeing in the expansion pattern. The void zone has been growing steadily, but its rate of expansion has slowed significantly in the last few thousand years, almost as if something has been resisting it. Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. You think humanity's presence in the galaxy has been holding this thing back? It's possible, Wright admitted. The timeline correlates with human development. As we've become more technologically advanced and started expanding into space, the void zone's growth has decreased. The communication array chimed, indicating that Rachel's message to the Galactic Council had been received and acknowledged. Within hours, she knew representatives from dozens of species would be demanding answers to questions she wasn't sure she could provide. We need more data, she decided. I want teams dispatched to every archaeological site within 100 light-years of the void zone. If we're going to present this to the Council, we need to be absolutely certain of our facts. Over the following days, reports poured in from archaeological teams across the galaxy. The pattern held true at every site. Advanced civilizations had thrived for centuries or millennia, then suddenly vanished, leaving only warnings about humanity's role as guardians against an ancient evil. The most detailed account came from the ruins on Wolf 359C, where the inhabitants had left a complete historical record of their final days. They described a growing sense of dread as their explorers reported finding empty star systems where thriving civilizations should have existed. Then came the dreams, shared nightmares that infected their entire population. Finally, the entity itself had arrived, a presence that existed in the spaces between thoughts, consuming minds like a parasite. But their final message was different from the others. Instead of just a warning about humanity, they had left specific instructions. Coordinates pointing to a region of space near Earth's solar system, along with technical specifications for some kind of detection equipment. They were trying to help us, Alex realized as he finished translating the Wolf 359 records. They knew we would eventually face this threat, and they were leaving us tools to fight it. Rachel studied the technical specifications. The technology was far beyond current human capabilities, but the principles were sound. It appeared to be some kind of consciousness detection array, designed to identify and track entities that existed primarily as mental energy. We need to get this information to Earth, she decided. If humanity really is destined to face this threat, our people need to start preparing. Dr. Wright interrupted their discussion with an urgent announcement. I'm reading massive gravitational disturbances from the void zone. Something is happening out there. The holographic display shifted to show real-time sensor data from the dead region of space. What they saw defied explanation. The void zone, which had been gradually expanding for thousands of years, suddenly began pulsing with dark energy. Space itself seemed to ripple around its edges, and long-range sensors detected something moving within the darkness. It knows, Rachel whispered, staring at the display in horrified fascination. Somehow it knows we've discovered the warnings. As if responding to her words, the disturbances in the void zone intensified. The ancient threat that had destroyed countless civilizations was stirring, and for the first time in thousands of years, it was turning its attention toward the inhabited regions of the galaxy. The time for research and investigation was over. Humanity's true test was about to begin. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of receiving Dr. Stone's report. Ambassador Tara Williams sat in the human delegation section, trying to maintain her composure while dozens of alien species debated humanity's fate. The council chamber buzzed with translated conversations in hundreds of languages. But the underlying tension was universal. "The archaeological evidence is compelling," announced Council Speaker Vallon, a tall being whose crystalline features reflected the chamber's lights. "However, the implications require careful consideration." Williams watched as holographic displays showed the ancient warnings discovered across the galaxy. Until 6 months ago, humanity had been considered a minor species, barely worthy of council membership. Now they were being discussed as the galaxy's potential saviors, against an ancient threat that most council members had dismissed as myth. "These dead civilizations spoke of humans as guardians," continued Speaker Vallon. "But we must ask ourselves, guardians against what? And are we prepared to stake the galaxy's survival on the word of extinct species?" Councillor Thresh, representing the Militaristic Hegemony Alliance, stood to address the chamber. "My species has studied human behavior for decades through long-range observation. While they show certain aggressive tendencies that could be useful in warfare, they are still a primitive species with limited technological capabilities." Williams felt her jaw clench, but she remained silent. The council's rules were clear about when human representatives could speak, and interrupting a senior counselor was forbidden. "However," Thresh continued, "our psychological analysts have noted some unusual characteristics in human mental patterns. Their ability to recover from trauma significantly exceeds any known species. They also demonstrate an alarming tendency to actively seek dangerous situations." The chamber's translation systems struggled with the concept, as most galactic species had evolved to avoid unnecessary risks. The idea that humans actually enjoyed danger was almost incomprehensible to many council members. Dr. Elena Martinez, the lead xenopsychologist for the human delegation, leaned forward to whisper to Williams, "Our preliminary tests show that human brain chemistry is indeed unique. We produce stress response chemicals that actually enhance cognitive function rather than impair it." On the chamber's main display, a presentation began showing comparative psychological profiles between humans and other galactic species. The data was striking. Where most intelligent species showed decreased problem-solving abilities under pressure, humans consistently performed better. Where other species experienced mental breakdown after traumatic events, humans adapted and often became stronger. "These findings are fascinating but inconclusive," declared Councillor Yenth of the Scientific Collective. "Enhanced stress response does not necessarily translate to protection against an entity that reportedly consumes consciousness itself." Williams finally stood, requesting permission to address the council. Speaker Vallon hesitated, then granted her the floor. "The human delegation recognizes that our species is young by galactic standards," she began. "But we would like to propose a controlled test of our supposed immunity to this threat." A murmur ran through the chamber. Several councillors exchanged glances that their translation systems interpreted as concern or alarm. "What kind of test?" asked Speaker Vallon. "Send a joint expedition to the edge of the void zone," Williams replied. "Include human volunteers alongside representatives from other species. If we truly have some form of natural protection, it should become apparent under controlled conditions." The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. Many council members argued that such a test was too dangerous, potentially exposing the expedition to the same fate that had befallen countless civilizations. Others insisted that without concrete proof of human immunity, they could not justify treating Earth as anything more than another potential victim. Finally, a compromise was reached. A small expedition would approach the edge of the void zone, maintaining safe distance while conducting detailed scans and psychological monitoring of all crew members. The ship would be heavily shielded and equipped with the most advanced evacuation systems available. 2 weeks later, the research vessel Harmony departed from Council Station 7 with a crew of 12. 4 humans, including Captain Mike Torres and psychologist Dr. Sarah Kim, were joined by 2 hegemony warriors, 3 scientific collective observers, 2 diplomatic representatives, and a crystalline entity serving as the ship's navigator. The journey to the Void Zone took 8 days through hyperspace. During the trip, Dr. Kim conducted baseline psychological evaluations of all crew members, establishing normal mental patterns for each species. The results confirmed what human researchers had suspected. The non-human crew members showed significantly higher anxiety levels as they approached their destination. It's almost like they can sense something, Dr. Kim reported to Captain Torres as they dropped out of hyperspace at the Void Zone's edge. Their stress indicators are off the charts, but they can't explain why. Through the ship's viewports, the Void Zone appeared as an absolute absence. Not just darkness, but a complete negation of space itself. Stars that should have been visible were simply gone, as if something had erased them from existence. Beginning detailed scans, announced Science Officer Rachel Chen, one of the human crew members. Energy readings are unusual. I'm detecting patterns that don't match any known physical phenomena. Within an hour of beginning their survey, the first signs of trouble appeared. Lieutenant Chorus, one of the hegemony warriors, began exhibiting signs of severe psychological distress. His normally aggressive demeanor changed to one of paralyzing fear, and he reported hearing whispers in his native language. The voices are telling me to surrender, he reported through clenched teeth. They say resistance is futile, that my thoughts belong to the darkness. Dr. Kim immediately began monitoring his brain activity while comparing it to the human crew members. The difference was stark. Where Chorus showed massive disruption in his neural patterns, the humans displayed only normal stress responses to a dangerous situation. As they moved closer to the Void Zone's boundary, the effects on the non-human crew intensified. The scientific collective observers began experiencing shared hallucinations, seeing phantom images of their home worlds being consumed by darkness. The diplomatic representatives fell into catatonic states, their minds apparently overwhelmed by some external influence, but the humans remained unaffected. They could observe their colleagues' distress and offer assistance, but they felt none of the psychological pressure that was devastating the alien crew members. Something is actively trying to penetrate our minds, Captain Torres realized. The other species can feel it, but we can't. Dr. Kim's scanners suddenly detected massive energy signatures approaching from deep within the Void Zone. Captain, we have incoming contacts. Whatever is in there, it knows we're here. The ship's sensors registered the approach of something vast and alien, but the entity remained invisible to normal detection methods. Only the consciousness scanning equipment derived from ancient archaeological finds could track its movement. All non-human crew to evacuation pods, Torres ordered immediately. This is what we came to test, but I won't risk their lives to prove a point. As the evacuation pods jettisoned toward the safety of distant space, the human crew remained at their stations. They could feel something pressing against the edges of their minds, like cold fingers trying to find a way inside. But where other species experienced terror and submission, the humans felt only curiosity and determination. It can't get in, Dr. Kim reported with amazement. Our minds are completely closed to its influence. The entity's frustration was palpable, even through the ship's shields. For perhaps the first time in thousands of years, it had encountered minds it could not touch, consciousness it could not consume. Captain Torres opened a communication channel to the distant evacuation pods. This is Harmony Actual. The test is complete. Humans appear to be naturally immune to the entity's psychological attacks. The implications were staggering. An entire galaxy of intelligent species was vulnerable to the ancient threat, but humanity stood alone in its natural resistance. The warnings left by dead civilizations hadn't been prophecy or myth. They had been simple statements of biological fact. As the ship retreated to safe distance, Dr. Kim compiled her findings. We're not just immune, she reported. Our presence seems to actually repel the entity. It withdrew when it realized it couldn't affect us. The return journey to Council Station 7 passed in contemplative silence. The human crew members understood that their lives had just changed forever. They were no longer simply members of a young galactic civilization. They were humanity's first confirmed guardians against the darkness that had devoured countless worlds. When the test results reached the Galactic Council, the debate ended immediately. Earth would receive full support in developing its defensive capabilities, and humanity would take its place as the galaxy's protectors against the ancient threat that lurked in the void. 6 months after the initial test expedition, Captain Mike Torres found himself commanding a much larger vessel as it approached the edge of the void zone. The exploration ship Prometheus carried a crew of 30, with equal numbers of humans and volunteers from 6 different alien species. This time they weren't just testing human immunity. They were actively seeking contact with the entity that had destroyed countless civilizations. Status report. Torres called out as they dropped out of hyperspace at the predetermined coordinates. All systems nominal, replied Lieutenant Helen Carter from the navigation station. We're holding position at exactly 50,000 kilometers from the void boundary. Dr. Sarah Kim moved between monitoring stations, checking the vital signs of their alien crew members. The hegemony warriors, scientific collective observers, and diplomatic volunteers had all requested to participate despite knowing the risks. They wanted to understand what humanity was protecting them from. Psychological baselines are established, Dr. Kim reported. All non-human crew members are showing elevated stress but within expected parameters. Through the ship's reinforced viewports, the void zone stretched before them like a wound in space itself. Long-range sensors showed nothing within that region, not even the background radiation that permeated the rest of the universe. It was as if reality simply stopped at its boundaries. Beginning approach sequence, announced Chief Navigator Ben Hayes, reducing speed to 1/4 impulse as the Prometheus moved closer to the void boundary. The effects on the non-human crew began immediately. Commander Vorth, the senior hegemony representative, gripped his console as waves of dread washed over him. The whispers have started, he reported through gritted teeth. They're speaking in old hegemony dialect, telling me that resistance brings only suffering. Dr. Kim's scanners showed massive disruption in the alien crew members' brain patterns, while the humans displayed only normal operational stress. It's targeting them specifically, she observed. The entity is using their own languages and cultural references. Science Officer David Park monitored the ship's consciousness detection arrays as they penetrated deeper into the zone's influence. I'm reading massive psychic emanations from approximately 100 kilometers ahead. Something very large is moving toward us. All non-human crew to the shielded compartments, Torres ordered. Engage maximum psychological barriers. The alien crew members retreated to specially constructed chambers lined with materials that had been developed from archaeological finds. The ancient civilizations had left more than just warnings. They had provided blueprints for limited protection against the entity's mental attacks. Contact in 30 seconds, Park announced. Energy signatures are off the scale. Then it spoke. The voice came not through the ship's communication systems, but directly into the minds of everyone aboard. For the alien crew members, even protected by their shielded chambers, the contact was overwhelming. Several fell unconscious immediately. Others began screaming in languages that their translators couldn't process. But the humans heard something different. Where the aliens experienced crushing despair and commands to surrender, the human crew heard what sounded almost like curiosity. Interesting, the voice said, its tone carrying amusement rather than malice when directed at human minds. After so many eons, I encounter minds that do not fear me. Captain Torres activated the ship's external communications. This is Captain Torres of the vessel Prometheus. We represent the Galactic Council and request dialogue. Laughter echoed through their minds, a sound like dying stars. Dialogue? I am the Devourer, child of Terra. I have consumed the thoughts of billions, devoured the dreams of entire civilizations. What could you possibly offer me that I have not already tasted? Dr. Kim stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. Why can't you affect human minds the way you affect others? An excellent question, the Devourer replied. Your species possesses something I have not encountered before. Your thoughts are protected. Not by technology or mystical barriers, but by the very nature of how your minds function. The entity's presence grew stronger, pressing against the ship's shields. Through the viewports, they could see space itself beginning to twist and bend around them. Stars that should have been light years away appeared to be moving closer, as if the entity was manipulating the fabric of reality. Other species think in patterns I can read and unravel, the Devourer continued. Their consciousness flows in predictable channels that I can enter and consume. But human thoughts are chaotic, unpredictable. You dream while awake, create meaning from randomness, find hope in despair. Your minds are fortresses built from contradictions. Torres exchanged glances with his crew. You've been testing other species for thousands of years, haven't you? That's why the ancient civilizations all left warnings. Indeed, each civilization I encountered learned of your species through dreams and visions I could not prevent them from receiving. Your minds broadcast a signal that resonates across time and space, a beacon of resistance that even I cannot silence. The revelation was staggering. Humanity's presence in the universe had been known to other species not through contact or communication, but through some kind of psychic signature that the devourer itself couldn't control. Every civilization I consumed, the entity continued, learned of the humans of Terra in their final moments. They saw visions of your world, understood instinctively that you were their only hope for revenge against me, so they left their warnings, hoping that someday you would be ready to face me. Science Officer Park's instruments detected massive energy buildups throughout the void zone. Captain, I'm reading activity across the entire region. Whatever this thing is, it's bigger than we imagined. I am not one entity, the devourer explained, reading their thoughts as easily as spoken words. I am the fusion of thousands of consciousness-devouring beings that once competed across the galaxy. We consumed each other in endless wars until only I remained, carrying the memories and hungers of all my fallen brothers. Dr. Kim's medical scanners detected something impossible. Captain, the entity isn't just psychic energy. It has physical components spread across hundreds of star systems. It's using consumed consciousness to manipulate matter itself. Correct, human scientist. I am thought made manifest. Dreams turn to nightmare reality. I reshape space according to my whims, create worlds from the memories of my victims, destroy stars with their despair. The alien crew members' condition was deteriorating rapidly despite their protective chambers. Commander Vorth's vital signs showed signs of complete mental breakdown, while the scientific collective observers had fallen into comas that their medical systems couldn't explain. We need to withdraw, Torres decided. We've learned what we came to learn. Yes, retreat to your safe spaces, the devourer agreed with amusement. But know this, children of Terra. I grow stronger with each passing year. Soon I will tire of our game and begin expanding toward your inhabited systems. Your immunity protects you, but it does not protect those you guard. As the Prometheus began its retreat, the entity's final words echoed in their minds. I have waited 50,000 years for this confrontation. I can wait a little longer while you prepare, but eventually, Guardians of the Galaxy, you must face me in battle, and when that day comes, we will learn whether human will is stronger than cosmic hunger. The journey back to Council Space passed in grim silence. The alien crew members required extensive medical treatment, their minds scarred by brief contact with an entity that existed to consume consciousness itself. But they had survived, protected by humanity's natural immunity and the ship's defensive systems. More importantly, they now understood the true scope of the threat. The Devourer wasn't just a dangerous alien. It was a cosmic predator that had been systematically hunting intelligent life across the galaxy for millennia. Every extinct civilization had fallen to its hunger, and everyone had tried to warn future generations about humanity's role as protectors. Dr. Kim's final report to the Galactic Council was clear and urgent. The entity is real, it's actively hostile, and it's planning to resume its expansion toward inhabited systems. Humanity's immunity makes us the only species capable of confronting it directly, but we'll need every advantage we can get. Captain Torres added his own assessment. It's not just powerful, it's intelligent and patient. This thing has been planning for thousands of years. If we're going to stop it, we need to start preparing for war on a scale the galaxy has never seen. The age of humanity's true test was about to begin. The massive construction project orbiting Earth's moon represented the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. Ships from dozens of species delivered materials and technology while human engineers worked around the clock to build what would become known as Deep Space Defense Command. Dr. Sarah Kim stood in the station's central observatory, watching as the final hull sections were moved into place by massive cargo haulers. It's hard to believe this all started with some ancient cave paintings, she commented to Director Lisa Chen, who had been appointed to oversee humanity's new role as galactic guardians. The archaeological evidence was just the beginning, Chen replied, reviewing construction progress on her tablet. The real proof came when we made contact with that thing. Now every species in the galaxy is depending on us. 3 months had passed since the Prometheus expedition, and the galaxy had mobilized with unprecedented speed. The Galactic Council had voted unanimously to provide Earth with advanced technology and resources, understanding that humanity's survival meant everyone's survival. "How's the volunteer program progressing?" Kim asked. Chen smiled grimly. "Better than expected, actually. We're calling them Voidwalkers, humans specially trained to operate in areas where the Devourer's influence is strongest." The response has been overwhelming. Across Earth, recruitment centers had been established in every major city. The requirements were strict. Volunteers needed exceptional psychological stability, high stress tolerance, and the ability to function in environments that would drive most species insane. Surprisingly, humans were lining up to qualify. "It's something in our nature," explained Dr. Robert Hayes, the project's chief psychologist, as he briefed the latest group of Voidwalker candidates. "Other species evolved to avoid existential threats. We evolved to confront them head-on." The training program was unlike anything in human history. Volunteers learned to operate consciousness detection equipment derived from ancient archaeological finds. They studied meditation techniques that strengthened mental barriers against psychic attacks. Most importantly, they trained to function as teams in environments where reality itself might be compromised. Lieutenant Commander Anna Torres, sister to the Prometheus captain, led one of the first Voidwalker units through a simulated mission. The holographic training environment replicated the distorted space-time effects that the Devourer could create, forcing her team to navigate using instruments when their senses couldn't be trusted. "Remember, the entity feeds on despair and confusion," she instructed her team as they moved through the simulation. "Stay focused on the mission objectives. Don't let it distract you with illusions." The simulation suddenly shifted, creating the appearance of their home cities under attack. Team members watched in apparent horror as holographic representations of their families were consumed by darkness. But their training held. They recognized the psychological warfare and continued their advance. "Target acquired," reported Specialist Jack Chen, using advanced scanners to locate the simulation's objective. "Consciousness signature confirmed. It's trying to make us believe our families are in danger, but the energy readings show it's just a projection." "Excellent work," Torres confirmed. "Remember, the Devourer's greatest weapon is making us doubt our own perceptions. Trust your instruments and trust each other." Meanwhile, in the Deep Space Defense Command laboratories, teams of human and alien scientists worked to develop new weapons based on their growing understanding of the Devourer's nature. Dr. Elena Martinez led the Consciousness Research Division, studying how human mental patterns could be weaponized against entities that existed primarily as psychic energy. "We've made a breakthrough," she announced during a joint briefing with military commanders. "The entity can't just consume human consciousness. It actually takes damage from prolonged contact with our minds." The discovery had come from analyzing data from the Prometheus encounter. When the Devourer attempted to penetrate human thoughts, the interaction wasn't neutral. It was actively harmful to the entity. Human willpower, determination, and hope seemed to act like acid against its psychic structure. "Think of it as an immune response," Martinez explained. "Our minds don't just resist the entity, they fight back automatically. The stronger our resolve, the more damage we inflict." Fleet Admiral Robert Chen, recently promoted to oversee military operations, studied the tactical implications. "So human crews aren't just immune to its attacks, they're actually weapons against it?" "Exactly. And the effect is cumulative. The more humans working together, the stronger the defensive and offensive capabilities become." This revelation led to the development of new ship designs, specifically for confronting the Devourer. The Guardian-class vessels were crewed entirely by humans and equipped with consciousness amplification technology that could project human mental patterns across vast distances. The first field test came sooner than expected. Long-range sensors detected the Devourer's influence spreading toward the Rigel system, where a mining colony of 50,000 aliens worked to extract rare elements. The colony's distress signals indicated that the entity was testing its expanded range, probing for weaknesses in the galaxy's defenses. "This is it," Admiral Chen announced as 3 Guardian-class ships prepared for immediate departure. "First real mission. We need to stop the entity's advance and protect those miners." Captain Laura Hayes commanded the lead vessel, the Guardian Prime, as the small fleet jumped toward Rigel. Her crew of 30 humans had trained for this moment. but none of them knew exactly what to expect when facing the Devourer in actual combat. Dropping out of hyperspace in 3, 2, 1, announced Navigator Tom Wilson. The Rigel system appeared on their screens, but it looked wrong. Stars that should have been brilliant white were dimmed to sickly yellow. Space itself seemed to ripple around the mining colony, which was broadcasting increasingly desperate emergency signals. "I'm reading massive psychic disturbances throughout the system," reported Science Officer Beth Carter. "The entity is definitely here, and it's affecting everything within 10 million kilometers. Colony status?" Hayes inquired. "Life signs are stable, but communications are becoming incoherent. The alien miners are experiencing severe psychological distress." Hayes made her decision quickly. "All ships advance in formation. Begin consciousness projection at maximum safe levels." As the 3 Guardian vessels moved deeper into the system, their crews began the process they had trained for. Using meditation techniques and technological amplification, they projected their collective human willpower outward like a weapon. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The ripples in space-time began to smooth out, and the dimmed stars gradually returned to their normal brightness. More importantly, the mining colony's communications cleared as the psychological pressure affecting the alien workers lifted. "It's working," Carter reported with amazement. "The entity's influence is retreating." But the Devourer wasn't going to withdraw without a fight. The space around the Guardian fleet suddenly filled with phantom images, false representations of Earth under attack, loved ones in danger, humanity's extinction at the hands of cosmic forces. "Ignore the illusions," Hayes commanded her crew. "Focus on what's real. We're here to protect those miners." The battle was unlike anything in recorded history. No weapons were fired, no shields were breached, but the conflict was no less intense. Human determination clashed against cosmic hunger in a struggle for the minds and souls of an entire star system. "Entity is attempting to retreat," reported Wilson from the navigation station. "Consciousness projection is maintaining pressure." "Stay with it," Hayes ordered. "We need to drive it completely out of this system." For 6 hours, the Guardian fleet pursued the Devourer's retreating influence, their combined willpower acting like a sword of light cutting through the darkness. When they finally returned to normal space, the Rigel system was completely clear of the entity's presence. "This is Guardian Prime to Rigel Mining Colony," Hayes broadcast. "Threat has been neutralized. You are safe to resume normal operations." The response from the colony was immediate and emotional. 50,000 alien voices expressing gratitude in dozens of languages, all thanking humanity for their protection. Dr. Kim, monitoring the mission from Deep Space Defense Command, compiled the initial results. "Not only did we successfully repel the Devourer, but we did it without suffering any casualties or equipment losses. Human consciousness weaponization is even more effective than we hoped." Director Chen smiled as she reviewed the mission reports. "The galaxy now knows that humanity can actively fight this thing, not just resist it. That changes everything." But even as they celebrated their first victory, long-range sensors detected troubling news. The Devourer's influence was expanding rapidly in other directions, moving toward populated systems faster than ever before. The entity had learned that humanity could hurt it, and it was responding with increased aggression. "It's done testing," Admiral Chen realized as he studied the tactical displays. "Now it's coming for us with everything it has." The real war was about to begin. The evacuation of Proxima Centauri B was proceeding faster than anyone had thought possible, but it still wasn't fast enough. Commander Laura Hayes watched through the bridge viewport of the Guardian Prime as massive transport ships loaded with refugees streamed past her position. Behind them, space itself was beginning to darken as the Devourer's influence expanded toward the inhabited system. "Fleet status report," she called to her communications. "Officer, 12 Guardian-class vessels in formation, plus support ships from 6 different species," Lieutenant Ben Wilson replied. "Total human crew complement is 450. It had been 8 months since humanity's first successful defense of the Rigel system, and the Devourer had responded by accelerating its expansion across the galaxy. 3 star systems had been completely consumed, their populations either evacuated or lost to the entity's hunger. Now it was making its final push toward the core worlds, and humanity stood as the galaxy's last line of defense. "Incoming transmission from Deep Space Defense Command," Wilson announced. Director Lisa Chen's face appeared on the main screen, her expression grim but determined. "Laura, you're looking at the largest evacuation in galactic history. 7 billion beings from 12 different species, all depending on you to buy them time." "We understand the stakes," Hayes replied.
"How long do you need?"
"Minimum 6 hours to complete the evacuation. 12 hours would be ideal." Hayes looked at her tactical display. The Devourer's influence was expanding at an unprecedented rate, consuming space itself as it advanced. At its current speed, it would reach the refugee ships within 4 hours. "We'll give you 12, she promised. As the communication ended, Hayes turned to address her crew. These 30 humans represented the best of humanity's Voidwalker program, volunteers who had trained specifically for this moment. They knew they were facing an entity that had destroyed countless civilizations, and they knew the odds were against them. "This is what we've been preparing for," Hayes announced. "Every exercise, every simulation, every meditation session has led to this moment. We're not just fighting for the refugees behind us. We're fighting for every intelligent species in the galaxy." Science Officer David Park monitored the consciousness detection arrays as they prepared for contact. "I'm reading massive psychic emanations from the entity's leading edge. It's different this time, more focused, more aggressive. It knows we can hurt it," Hayes realized. "This isn't exploration or testing anymore. This is an extermination attempt." The Devourer's influence reached them like a wave of absolute darkness. Space around the Guardian fleet began to twist and bend as reality itself came under assault. Stars aged and died in moments. Planets formed and crumbled to dust, and phantom galaxies bloomed and faded in impossible displays of cosmic power. But the human crews remained unaffected by the visual chaos. Their training had prepared them for exactly this kind of assault on perception and reason. They trusted their instruments and focused on their mission parameters. "Beginning consciousness projection," announced Dr. Sarah Kim from the Guardian Prime's medical bay. She was coordinating the mental defenses of all 450 humans in the fleet, helping them focus their collective willpower into a weapon against the entity. The effect was immediate. As human determination flowed outward from the Guardian ships, the distortions in space-time began to stabilize. The phantom images faded, and the advancing edge of the Devourer's influence slowed noticeably. "Target acquired," reported Park from his sensor station. "I'm reading the entity's core consciousness approximately 2 million kilometers ahead. It's massive, spanning multiple star systems." Hayes studied the readings in amazement. The Devourer wasn't just an entity occupying space, it had become space itself across vast regions of the galaxy. Its consciousness permeated dark matter, manipulated gravitational fields, and used the very fabric of reality as extensions of its will. "All ships, advance in diamond formation," Hayes commanded. "Maintain maximum consciousness projection. We're going in." As the Guardian fleet moved deeper into the Devourer's domain, the entity's response intensified. It abandoned subtle psychological warfare in favor of direct assault, attempting to overwhelm human minds through sheer psychic pressure. "It's trying to crush our thoughts," reported Captain Anna Torres, from the Guardian 2. "Feeling massive pressure against mental barriers." "Hold formation," Hayes ordered. "Remember your training. The entity feeds on fear and despair. Give it hope and determination instead." The battle was fought on multiple levels simultaneously. While the ships maneuvered through twisted space-time, their crews engaged in mental combat with an entity that existed primarily as conscious energy. Human willpower clashed against cosmic hunger in a struggle that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. "I'm detecting structural changes in the entity," Park announced. "Our consciousness projection is actually damaging its core matrix." Hayes felt a surge of hope. "Keep pushing. We're hurting it." But the Devourer had one final strategy. Instead of retreating, it began to concentrate its entire consciousness into a smaller area, essentially sacrificing its expanded territory to focus maximum power against the human fleet. "All stations, brace for impact," Hayes warned as massive psychic energies converged on their position. The assault was unlike anything they had trained for. The Devourer threw the accumulated consciousness of thousands of consumed civilizations against the Guardian ships, trying to overwhelm human minds with the despair and terror of entire extinct species. For a moment, the human crews wavered. They could feel the final thoughts of billions of beings who had died screaming in the darkness. They experienced the hopelessness of civilizations that had watched their stars go out one by one. But they also felt something else. In the midst of all that consumed consciousness, they found the original warnings left by ancient species. The messages weren't just about humanity's immunity to the devourer. They were about humanity's purpose. We're not just guardians, Dr. Kim realized, her voice filled with wonder. We're liberators. The revelation spread through the human fleet like wildfire. They weren't just fighting to protect the living. They were fighting to free the dead. Every consciousness the devourer had consumed was still trapped within its psychic matrix, waiting for someone strong enough to break them free. All ships maximum projection, Hayes commanded. We're going to finish this. 450 human minds focused their collective will into a single unified purpose. Not just resistance, not just defense, but active liberation of every soul the devourer had imprisoned across 50,000 years. The effect was beyond anything they had imagined. The entity's consciousness matrix began to unravel as the trapped minds found freedom through human determination. Billions of liberated souls added their strength to humanity's assault, turning the devourer's own accumulated power against it. The entity is fragmenting, Park reported in amazement. Its consciousness is breaking apart into component pieces. What had once been a unified cosmic predator was rapidly dissolving into the separate entities it had originally been. But these fragments were no longer capable of existing independently. They had been too thoroughly integrated into the devourer's matrix. They're dying, Dr. Kim observed as she monitored the entity's dissolution. The component consciousnesses can't survive separation. But the devourer's death wasn't the end of the threat. The massive psychic energies it had accumulated across millennia were being released all at once, threatening to tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. We need to contain the release, Hayes realized. If that energy disperses uncontrolled, it could destroy half the galaxy. The solution came from an unexpected source. The liberated consciousness of ancient civilizations, grateful for their freedom, offered to help contain their former captors' death throes. Working together with the human fleet, they wove a prison of pure willpower around the dissolving entity. Containment field established, reported Torres from Guardian 2. The energy release is being channeled into controlled dissipation. For 6 hours, the combined force of human determination and liberated alien consciousness worked to safely dispose of the devourer's accumulated power. When the process was finally complete, the dark zones that had plagued the galaxy for millennia began to fill with new stars, born from the recycled energy of the ancient threat. This is Guardian Prime to all vessels, Hayes broadcast to the evacuation fleet. Threat neutralized. The galaxy is safe. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 7 billion voices in hundreds of languages expressing gratitude, relief, and amazement that the ancient nightmare was finally over. But even as they celebrated victory, the human crews understood that their work wasn't finished. The devourer was gone, but the galaxy would always face new threats. Humanity had found its purpose among the stars, not as conquerors or explorers, but as guardians and protectors. Dr. Kim's final report to the Galactic Council summarized humanity's new role. We have established permanent monitoring stations at key locations throughout the galaxy. The Voidwalker Corps will continue to train and expand, ready to face whatever threats may emerge. We are the Watchers in the dark, the guardians against the void, the protectors of all who think and dream. Director Chen smiled as she read the report from Deep Space Defense Command. The ancient warnings had been fulfilled, but more importantly, they had been transformed. Humanity was no longer just guarding against a specific threat. They had become the galaxy's permanent shield against the darkness that existed beyond the stars. The age of humanity's guardianship had truly begun.